going to talk about entering proposals in Cayuse SP today. And let me just go on to the next slide so we can go into what I mean we're going to get into in detail. The first thing that I hope you get out of this morning is that you know the proposal process for extramural funding at UC Davis. And then I hope that you'll understand the purpose of internal processing forms, or IPFs. These are also just referred to as proposals in Cayuse SP. I'm going to say IPF a lot, so you might want to remember that one. And also routing and approval process. And I'm going to explain this all in a little bit. Then we're going to also look at how to identify statuses. So part of using Cayuse SP is not just submitting the proposals and award modifications to us, but it's also that you can check the status of those documents. You can check the status of those actions, and you can access all of your documents as well in Cayuse SP. This is the outline for this morning. We're going to start with an overview of Cayuse. Then we're going to look at IPS in detail. We're going to talk about proposal submission to SPO, and then the proposal routing and approval process. And then also, if there are time, we will go through the resources. If there's not time today, I'm not going to go through the resources section with you. However, after today's class, I will send you a PDF of today's presentation. You should not need to take any notes unless there's something you really want to jot down, or that's the way that you learn. Of course, do it works for you. But I do try to keep everything in here for you. The links will be accessible and all of that. Unless we come up with something new today, you shouldn't need to write down links at least. Now, let's dive into looking at Cayuse. At UC Davis, we use two of Cayuse's Research Suite products. They have multiple products. However, we only use two. The first one, and the one that we're going to talk about today, is Cayuse SP. We use this for the internal routing and approval of proposals and significant award amendments. Not all award amendments, just certain ones. And they're the ones that require department or dean approval. That's how you can think about it. On our website, we have details of what you do for each type of modification. So I do have details on that, but it's not the focus so much today. Cayuse 424 is a system-to-system submission system that we use instead of grants.gov. And we use that for applications to most federal sponsors. Never use Cayuse 424 for an application to NSF. If you are applying to NSF, always, always, always use NSF Fastlane or research.gov. We do not want you to use Cayuse 424 in that situation. If you're applying to NIH, you can use Assist or 424. It's your preference. It's completely fine. We do recommend Assist if you're doing multi-component like center and U grants, because it just seems to work a little better. It puts it together in this really great format. It's very user-friendly. However, Cayuse 424 works as well. So if you're someone who just really likes 424, or your PI does, and you want to work in one system primarily, you can totally do that as well. Cayuse also has system administration tools that we use, and these are used for, out in the departments, they use them to assign roles and give people access to their proposals and their awards. There's also where you can look that up to see who has what assignment, and we use it on the back end to, do profiles and sponsors and sponsor codes and things, well, not sponsor codes, but input sponsors in the system and all of that. All right. So now what I want to do is just kind of look at this Cayuse SP. This is the dashboard. So the internal processing form and proposal are used interchangeably in Cayuse SP, as I mentioned. I like to say internal processing form or IPF instead of proposal, because I really think of the proposal as that entire package. And so you can get that in here, but we talk about the internal processing form, and that's that form that you're completing. That's that internal routing and approval form. The IPF and all the application materials make up the proposal package, right? So just keep that in mind. All or some of the proposal package is going to be in Cayuse SP, depending on if you're using another system. For example, if you're submitting to Cayuse 424, you might not have you won't have all of the internal documents that you have in Cayuse SP and 424, because 424 is that sponsor application. We do get a PDF of that entire application and upload it into SP, but it's also housed in 424, where the internal documents are not, because 424 is that sponsor application system. SP is our internal system, right? It's that proposal and award modification routing and approval system. It's our award repository. This is where you can access your records of proposals, awards, outgoing subawards as well. And it's also where you can request advanced accounts, which is pre-award spending if you ever need that. I like to look at the Cayuse Research Suite in this way because we have Cayuse SP and Cayuse 424, and they really do work together, especially when we're looking at routing and approval. All of our profiles are housed in Cayuse 424. So that's for everyone. That's for me, that's for you, that's for the PIs. That is where their appointment information is housed, their budget information, their fringe benefit codes, their unit, right? All of that stuff. That's where all of that is. And then that feeds into Cayuse SP. Now, when you add someone to an application in SP, if their default unit is incorrect, you can change it on that document in SP, and you should, or it's going to get stuck in routing. So you should always make sure it's correct. However, the best thing to do is to keep your 424 profile current, right? To keep their 424 profile current. And then that is all leading into those approving units. Your internal processing form is going to need to be approved by the administering unit of the proposal. And that is the unit that you select on the general tab of the IPF. It will also route to your investigators or research team unit departments. So anyone that you list on that investigator research team tab that is listed in any role except for 2, which I'll explain, it will also route to that unit for approval, to their unit head. The two roles that you can use to add people to give them access to the proposal and not have it affect the routing are proposal editor and other participant no routing. Those are the only 2 roles that do not affect the routing. So keep that in mind. And I always encourage you to add yourself as a proposal editor, as well as anyone else who needs access to that proposal and or that award. If you add yourself as the proposal editor, you're going to have automatic access whenever an award is created off of that proposal. So it just saves a step. If you add any affiliated units, they will also need to approve that. We don't really see that much. We sometimes see it if you're using the Primate Center, though, because they need to approve things that are coming through their unit. So you would add them as an affiliated unit, and then whoever they set up as their IPF approver would be the one to approve that. And then if you have internal cost sharing, you actually enter that in one entry, all in aggregate. You select the internal cost sharing unit. That's the actual unit name. It's INTL cost sharing, all 9s. You select that and you enter the cost sharing in aggregate. For example, if you have, say, physics is committing some money in year 1 and sociology in year 1, you would combine the amount that they're committing, and then you would enter it in one entry, and in the details you'd put the description of the breakdown, and then you would upload their email or email or letter that approves that cost sharing commitment, because we need that anyways. So we don't want to route it to them for approval in the system as well, because we need that email or letter. Often there's a letter that's required to go to the sponsor or something like that. So we're trying to minimize duplicated effort there and approvals. It was causing a lot of confusion at first. So that's the way that we do that. And if you ever find it confusing, do not worry, because the instructions are listed in bold red right where you enter the cost sharing. So you should be able to see that if you forget. All right, so now let's discuss this in a little bit more detail. All right, oh, I hope you didn't just hear my dog groan. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit more detail, right? To create an internal processing form, you're gonna select Start New Proposal. You're gonna use this for proposals and some award modifications, such as a change in principal investigator or a change in administrative unit or a change in cost sharing. Any of those would require a new internal processing form. However, say you have a no-cost extension request, you're gonna email that to us if you have something like that. So that's all listed on our website and in our instructions as well. To view proposals where you either are the proposal owner, which means you created the proposal, or you're listed on that investigator research team tab in any role, you're going to select My Proposals. You would view proposals for an admin unit, which you have proposal data access. You would view that from proposals in My Unit. And then if you are a pre-award spending approver, meaning that you're someone who approves or endorses advanced account requests for your unit, you would go to the advanced account inbox to view any of those requests that are outstanding. To view awards, where you're on the investigator research team tab, you would select My Awards. And then awards in My Unit works just like proposals in My Unit. You have to have award data access, and then you can view any awards that have your unit listed as the admin unit from awards in My Unit. PIs and co-PIs must certify internal processing forms or proposals, and they do this from the PI certification inbox. Here you see a little 1 out to the left of that inbox, and that's because I have one proposal that I need to certify. Anytime you have outstanding things, you see that number there. For example, if you look back up to my proposals, you see the number 77. That's because I have 77 draft proposals. That's a lot. That's a lot. I better get on it. And then if you are an IPF approver, you would go to the unit approval inbox to authorize any proposals that either as the admin unit or you have people in your unit that are listed on the investigator research team tab in any role other than those 2 roles I mentioned. Now let's go into how we actually submit an internal processing form. I've mentioned that they are used for internal routing and approval at UC Davis. OPI have to provide confirmation that they are in agreement with this proposal before we work on it. So that's why they must certify the proposal before we can assign it to an analyst in sponsored programs. The unit head and the dean, the unit head of the admin unit has to approve the proposal. The unit head of any of those units on the investigative research team have to approve the proposal. And if you're using, if you are submitting a proposal that involves investigators or the admin units in School of Vet Med or School of Medicine, then their dean's office also have to approve the proposal. And before it arrives in our office for review. So please always keep that in mind. It's really important. And what they're approving when they do this is they are saying, as the unit head, that they're supportive of the proposal. They're also saying that they approve any cost shared effort that's listed on that investigator research team tab. We do not require additional, like an email saying from the department head saying I approve this effort, because that's done on that investigative research team tab whenever they approve it. However, if you have, cash or something like that that's being cost shared, that's when we need a commitment letter or email. Internal processing forms are required for new proposals, resubmissions, and after the facts. So an after the fact is what happens when you have an award or funding that's come in and a proposal was not routing to sponsor programs. That shouldn't happen. In most cases, you should always be coming through our office. Anytime you're submitting a proposal for funding that is something in our purview, it really needs to come through our office first. However, there are times when it doesn't, and often for good reason. I believe like the state of California does some contracts that are often after the facts, and that's just the way they do it. Or maybe your PI has a relationship with somebody at a company that's like, hey, I'm going to give you some money, right? We have these things, and sometimes it happens. So if that happens to you, you actually submit your proposal just like you would any other proposal, because we have to review it. So you're going to submit it, but in the proposal type, you're going to select after the fact, or ATF, and we have some specific instructions on how you would do this. Now, don't do it unless you have an award. If your PI submits a proposal to a sponsor and didn't go through us and you find out about it, there's really no reason to come to us unless it actually gets funded, because you've already submitted it, we didn't approve it, we have to look at it when it comes in, right? It's not something we could count as something that we submitted, because technically we did not approve it. So no need to do that. If you have an after the fact, you're going to be uploading an award agreement with it or something to let us know that the sponsor is funding it. And there are details in our handbook on how to do that explicitly. These are going to route to our proposals team and sponsored programs, except for ATFs. ATFs are going to route to our awards team because you already have an award in hand. Okay, the next thing that this is also used is for significant award amendments. You're going to use an IPF if you have any of these types of changes: change in PI, change in admin unit, or change in cost sharing. And these are going to route to our award team. So now I want to play a little game, and I would like us to use the annotate feature to indicate if you think an IPF is needed or not needed for each of these situations. Okay, so I think we have enough answers to go ahead and look at this, and I'm very pleased to see our answers here. Yes, we would need an IPF for a new proposal to NIH. We would definitely need that. We would need a proposal for a resubmission or an IPF for a resubmission as well, and as well as a change in PI request, but not for a progress report to the USDA. Right. So here are my answers. As you can see, I picked an icon stamp of like little prints because I love animals, and you all were right. So thank you so much. So it's very, very important that we stick to timelines and deadlines. The proposal must arrive in sponsored programs at least 5 business days before the sponsor deadline in order for us to do a full review. And this does not mean that you're going to select submit for routing on that internal processing form 5 business days before the sponsor deadline, because it still has to go through all of those approvals that we just talked about, right? And it can take a varied amount of time, depending on how many units are involved or how fast your unit is, or if it has to go to the dean's office. So you want to keep that in mind, and you have to build in that time as well. Some tips for using and some guidelines when you're submitting your proposals is that you want to follow and check the status online, right? You can kind of look on there and see what's going on. Contact us for more information. You can find out who has been assigned to your action in Cayuse. The subaward analyst is listed in the subcontract notes. That's just a little tip. We're not talking about outgoing subawards today, but I want everybody to remember that. If you have an outgoing subaward that's part of a project that you're working on, you can check the status of that in Cayuse SP, but you have to do it from the subcontract. So you find the award and then the project, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And from the project, you can find all of the associated subawards, proposals, awards, everything is listed in there. So that project is the overarching folder that a little bit later. Follow the rules as always, right? Provide all of the required information and documents, use your resources. Also confirm that any of the units that need to approve your IPF have at least one IPF approver listed. And you can do that from that research contact section that I showed you on that main Cayuse page. And then monitor the routing. Check the status and follow up if you need to make sure it gets to our office on time. When I say that we need the proposal 5 business days before the sponsor deadline, and of course more is better, right? More is always better. I don't mean we need the whole thing. We're not going to look in detail at everything. We need the things that we review. We need the completely routed and authorized IPF. We need the budget spreadsheet and the budget justification. If those are not required by the sponsor, we cannot require it either, but we strongly encourage it. It helps with auditing and makes sure you have enough funds and all of those things. Make sure you're using the correct F&A rate, right? We really encourage it. If you are going to submit a proposal that does not require the budget or budget justification, and your PI is not going to provide one at all, put that in the submission notes of your IPF. And that way we'll know that we'll sign it without the budget and budget justification. But you can't provide it later. If so, you're going to go back in the queue. So just remember that. And then the scope of work. It can be a draft. We need the final at the time of submission, but it can be a draft. We need a final at time of submission to the sponsor. However, it can be a draft when you submit it to us. It only needs to be final enough or accurate enough for us to be able to make sure that you're using the correct F&A rates, fringe benefit codes, things like that, right? That you're applying the F&A rate is the big thing. Correct. I'll show you just like this really brief video of how you enter an internal processing form. And then I'm going to share a scenario with you, and you're going to go into our UAT environment, our test environment, and you're going to enter an internal processing form to the best of your ability. You're not going to have everything you need, and you're only going to have a certain amount of time to do it. So I don't want anyone to stress about it. The point is just to kind of read the scenario and then get in there and get the feeling for how you do this. So let me just find this this is a very brief, like minute-long video. I'm just going to go on to the next one. So what I can do is let me get into this with you, and let's try this PowerPoint. Actually, I'm just going to share this lab scenario with you real quick. I'm going to upload. We're going to do it a little differently because of the issues, the technical difficulties I'm having today. But I'm going to upload the lab scenario right now into chat. So you should be able to see that. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to share my screen. And let's just go ahead and watch me a little bit to get this started. And then I'm going to get everyone logged into the UAT environment. And this is I'm going to give you the link right now in chat. But we're all going to log in. Let's see. We're all going to log in with the username Amy Admin, A-M-I-E Admin, and the password is training. So if you want, I don't know how everyone's set up. You can do this in a couple different ways. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go in and kind of start entering an internal processing form that matches the scenario I just shared with you. I'm going to share the Cayuse screen so that you can see that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into Cayuse and share my screen. And I have the scenario up on my second screen. That way I can look at it. So I'm logging in, just like I asked all of you to, is Amy Admin with the password training. And I'm going to go to Cayuse SP. And then from here, I see my dashboard. And what I want to do is I want to start a new proposal. All right, so up here, we want to start new proposal. And the first thing we have to do is complete this general information tab. You don't get the rest of your IPF until you do that. I want to point out that it's really good to read. We have instructions here on how to complete the form if you're not sure how to do something. So it's a really good way to make sure that you do know. The first thing I want to do is enter my sponsor information. And my scenario says that my sponsor is National Institutes of Health, right? So I want to just put my cursor into this field or select the magnifying glass, either way. And you get this search box. Here you want to type in something that will help you find this sponsor. I'm going to NIAID. I'm going to select it, enter that funding opportunity or sponsor application number, which I have right here is this PAEN-RO1. So I'm just going to copy it in there. And you want to put the sponsor program name. So this is the funding opportunity program that you're applying to. And ours is just this, it doesn't really say, it just has the the information of the actual call. So we could go to it and we could find what it is. I'm just going to put something, but you want to find out what the actual program name is and put it in there. And then here's where you put the link to that. So I'm just going to kind of make it up for our example today. You only ever put something in the prime funding if you need to share, or if you're having flow through funding. So if we are a subaward, say that we're submitting a subaward to UC Irvine and UC Irvine is submitting to NIH, then what we would actually do here is our sponsor would be UC Irvine because that's who we're applying to, and then our prime funding agency would be NIH. But unless it's like a flow through, we never indicate the NIH funding agency. The admin unit is going to be the unit that is administering the project, and here it tells us ecology. So we'll put our mouse, our cursor in the field, however you access this, and do a select. And then from here, you're going to find the actual unit, and you can search by unit code or by unit name. I hope you're seeing the pop-up window now because I'm sharing the whole screen. So I'm going to select ecology. And then the primary administrative contact is myself because this is the person I want sponsored programs to contact. So I'll put Amy Admin in here because that's who we are today. In the short project name, what you would enter is you can find it up here, the date that is due to the sponsor, the PI, and the sponsor, right? So this is due 5 business days from today, so we're running behind. So that would be August 20th. And the PI is Apple. And you can see that in the budget, who the PI is. And then the sponsor is NIH. The project start date is January 1st. And the end date is December 31st of 2024. And the activity code, it doesn't say here, but most of the work we do is basic. So I'm going to go ahead and select basic. But if you don't know, you can look at the call for proposals or the request for applications and see what type of funding they provide, what type of work they'll be providing funding for. The proposal type is going to be new. This is the first time this is being submitted to this sponsor. If you were submitting a proposal that needed to go to the Graduate Studies Office of External Fellowships, you would select the new grad studies. If it was something that needed to go to the UC Davis Health Clinical Trials Contracts Office, meaning it's a fully industry-sponsored clinical trial, then you would select new UC Davis Health. If this was an after the fact, like we talked about earlier, you would select after the fact, and you would be the short name a little bit differently as well. So that's like new. And the instrument type is grant. We know that that's what NIH generally provides. Now, if you do one of those wrong, it's not that big of a deal. We can correct it after we get it in sponsor programs. The submission method is, I didn't put it in here for you, so you wouldn't know this, but our submission method is going to be Cayuse 424. And then we're going to put that sponsor deadline again right here. It's 5 p.m. at this time. Receipt. And we asked you to put this in the military time. And then here in the project title is where you put that full project title. For this example, go ahead and put your initials or your name so that we can identify who it actually. Put it up here. Go into the short project name and put your name or your initials. That way you can identify it's yours. So if we move on or something, you'll know which one to come back to, and we won't all open the same proposal. You never created a pair before. We don't use that functionality. So from here, you'll select save. And as long as you've completed all of the fields, you're going to get the rest of the forms or the rest of the pages of this form, of this internal processing form. If you didn't complete something, then it's going to indicate what you need to complete here. So what I would like you to do now is go ahead and take the scenario, and I'm going to share that screen with you in just a moment. But take that scenario that I uploaded in the chat and that I'm about to share with you, and go ahead and complete the rest of this internal processing form to the best of your ability. Note that whenever you're on a page, you might need to select save at the bottom to get that green check mark. The green check mark will only appear if you complete the entire page. If you can't complete a certain section on the page, just leave it blank because it won't save it. To save, you have to complete that entire page. All right, so from here, I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to share this screen with you so that you can now be able to see the scenario as well. Again, the link that you need and the password and everything is up here. So go ahead and start completing this to the best of your ability, and go ahead, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just go ahead and look at how I prepared this. If you were not able to get one done with your name on it, don't worry about it. Let's go ahead, and I'm just going to show you my sample proposal, which is this one right here. I'm going to select the hyperlink so that I can open it, and it is being very slow. All right, so I've got my NIA ID, right? That's who is my sponsor, my number, my funding opportunity number. Here I would put that program name, so it actually, like, I could, if I didn't know it, right, I could just go and kind of look it up. I love Google. And it's one, so this is like a fake proposal. It's in their test announcement, so you're not really gonna find it. But in general, you'd probably find something like this, right? And you could go to it and you could put it in there. And the project name, the program name, I just wanna show you where you would find it in case you're not sure. It's going to be here, this funding opportunity title, right? So you could copy that and you could just paste it in here. You could take the link, you could paste it in here. I love copy and paste. But make sure you copy and paste the right thing, because sometimes the wrong thing comes up. Ecology, Amy Admin. Here's my short project name that I gave it so I could easily find it, right? We already looked at this page. Our investigator, if you make any changes, you have to like save. So I did make some changes. And now I have all of my other tabs. The green check mark means that the system requirements are there. It doesn't mean that you did it right, but it means the system requirements are there. The investigators research team tab, again, we have notes here, and you're gonna see in red here, it talks about allocation of credit. And allocation of credit is allocation of intellectual credit. It has nothing to do with F&A or indirect cost return, and I cannot be more clear about that. It has nothing to do with F&A indirect cost return. It is about who gets intellectual credit, and it's up to the PI. You can, if your PI does not tell you how to divvy up that allocation of credit, we divvy it up equally among all senior personnel. Otherwise, you can indicate how your PI wants to divvy it up. I've got Charlie as my lead PI, who's 3% effort, sponsored effort, because that's not cost shared effort. Allocation of credit is 50%, and then the person months. If I needed to make a change here, I could edit or delete it. I have Cassie, and we had to change Cassie's unit, right? When Cassie came up, her unit was not ecology. So if you have a different unit here, you want to make sure it's the ecology unit, because that is what you want. That's what the document that you got says. So you could select edit and you could make that change. I probably came up with OVCR sponsored programs, and you don't want that here. Let's just pretend I have a dual appointment, okay? I have a 50% appointment in ecology, and I'm participating from that role. So I have that here. And to change, if you needed to change the unit, you could click or select in here if you don't click, and find the unit and change it. And this is also where you do those roles. We added Amy Admin as a proposal editor. It doesn't matter what her unit says here, because it's not going to route for her unit's approval. So we can just leave it like that. If you added Amy in a role other than proposal editor or other participant routing, you need to delete her and re-add her, okay? Because it won't, there's a bug in the system that won't correct. So I'm giving you a tip. Any questions about that page? The budget page is probably where most people have some questions. When you're preparing your budget in Cayuse SP, we just need an overview of the budget, because you are actually already, you're going to upload your Excel budget, right? So you've already got your budget prepared, hopefully on our budget template, and you're going to just complete this based on that. Now you can see I have a little mistake here, but we're going to do the summary form. That's all we ever want. This is actually 4 budget periods. I don't know why I had selected 2. I have the current period is your starting period, that first period. So that's that first period, and then our entire project period. You could add comments if you wanted, but just know that they're available to everybody to see. This is where you would add cost sharing that like I talked about. And you can see right here in bold red letters, it lets you know the instructions for that. This does not have any internal cost sharing, so we do not need to include it. We select no. Our F&A rate, we've selected 57% for the current period. And over here is blank, because I had I had it as 2 budget periods, and so it just automatically had done that one. So now I need to select in the entire project period and select 57%, because that was our rate. That's our rate that was listed in the budget that I gave you. It's possible you have multiple F&A rates. Maybe you have instruction for something, and so you could indicate another rate here if you need it. It's also possible that you have a rate that's not listed here. Maybe you have a 0% rate or a 10% rate. You can put that down here and then in the F&A rate and say change rate, and it will do that for you. If you're doing that, you probably have an exception though, right? Or we have to get an exception. Keep that in mind. Then I have my sponsor direct cost, and let's see if I entered this correctly. So I did on this first period. My sponsor direct cost is $37,796. And you can see that on the budget I gave you under total direct costs. So that's all of the costs for that first budget period. But the F&A rate base, which is the amount of direct costs that we're going to apply the F&A cost to, is different. And it's different because we have equipment. Our equipment cost $25,000. So in that first budget period. So I've reduced that from my F&A rate base. That's why my indirect cost base, or my F&A rate base, is $12,796. Right? F&A or indirect cost to equipment when we're using the modified total direct cost base, which is what all of our negotiated rates are on. But there are some other bases that you may use, and there's exceptions to every rule. So we want to just check and make sure that the indirect costs are the same. This F&A 7,294 I've listed, and it is. If it were different, you could uncheck use calculated values and put that amount in there. Sometimes it's different by $1 because of rounding issues. Now the entire project is the total project cost. So the total sponsor direct cost for all 5 years is $88,980. The base for the F&A cost is $63,980. Then we can make sure costs are calculating correctly, which they are. You never put anything in fee. We do not do an indirect cost fee. And then we just want to make sure that these total up and they match, which they do. If we had entered cost sharing, it would be listed here based on our entries on the other pop-up windows. And we have no additional resources. Say that we were going to use the Primate Center, we might say yes, and say we're going to use some space and equipment and explain what we're using, but we're saying no. And if we did that, we would have them listed on the first tab. Let me show you. If you have an affiliated unit, you're probably not going to, but I think I saw some Primate Center people on here, so that's why I'm talking about it a little bit more than I usually do. But on this general information tab, they would also likely list them here in the affiliated units. And then that's going to route to the Primate Center for approval. They're also listed on the budget so they can see what they're approving. Then I don't want to go through every single tab because I think that they make sense. The regulatory compliance tab is where you enter your human subjects and vertebrate animal information, biohazardous information, the recipients, which we have none, so we would just select no subcontractors, and that would allow us to get that check. Okay, I'll go back to the budget in a moment. So we had no subcontractors. So let me go just back to the budget real quick. How you set up the budget periods, all you do is up at the top, you go here to select number of budget periods and you can select it, and then it will, if you only have 2 budget periods, then it's going to auto calculate that second column for you. But if you have 1 or 2, it will auto calculate that second column. If you have more than that, then you have to actually enter the entire project amount information as well. So it's right up here, and you can just change it if you've done it incorrectly like I did earlier. Let's see. So something else, I'm just going to point out a couple important things. If you have questions, chat them or unmute yourself, whatever you want to do. Something kind of I want to point out, financial conflicts of interest. This tab, one thing I really recommend that department admins do is instead of actually submitting the proposal, leave some of it blank and have the PI do it. Have the PI go in, look at the proposal after you have gotten it ready for them, and then they can go in and make any changes and submit and then certify. It makes it a lot easier to do. It's not required to do in that order, but I suggest it. And what you can do in that case is you leave this blank right here, this financial conflicts of interest tab, and that way they have to go in and look at it and say, oh yeah, I need to make sure that I do my disclosures, financial conflict of interest disclosures as appropriate. And it has instructions here for how they do that. All they have to do to submit this to us is say yes and save, and then it will give them that green check mark. It is required. They have to say yes, or else we're not going to proceed. The other thing I want to point out are location of sponsored activities. Over here, so we've indicated here that we're going to use the animal husbandry beef barn for 75% and then this core for 25%. And all 4 quadrants must equal 100%. If you're going to be doing work using a core facility or an ORU or A&R, it's really important for them, for reporting, for you to indicate in here that you're using them and for how much. So that's like how much time is actually the work is being conducted at their center or core, and it's very helpful for them. So I want to point that out. The other thing I want to point out are the proposal attachments. So here you need to upload at least those minimum documents for assignment. That's your project scope of work, your budget, and your budget justification. And we also like for you to upload the RFA. So I would have printed to PDF that call for proposals we looked at, and I would upload it in here as well. If you don't do that, we're going to do it in sponsored programs, but it's really helpful if you do it right away for us. That makes sure that we have that historical document of what we reviewed on, because sometimes the calls change on their link, right? So there might be changes, and we want to make sure we have documentation of what we actually reviewed. All right, approving units. In this case, is very easy. We only have one. That's ecology, right? But what if, let's say Cassie works in School of Medicine. I'm going to go back and change Cassie's appointment. Sorry for talking about myself in third person, but it just makes more sense when I'm doing this. Okay, so here I'm just going to say that I work in internal med. So let me find one of theirs. I'm going to say allergy and save this. And so I'm updated with my new unit. I'll go to approving units now. And now I have all of these other units, right? And they're okay. Sometimes you're going to get units that are erroneous and you don't want them there. However, we know that all of these 3 additional ones are okay because Cassie's unit is internal medicine and allergy. And then you can see that this unit code 20 says it's rolling up from 049239, right? So that's this unit code. So we're like, okay, that's good. It can be there. Now, if instead you saw something that said something like use the PI's internal med department, and over here it said principal investigator, that means you need to go back to the investigators tab and correct that unit code because it's not correct. But because it says roll up from, we're golden, or aces, whatever, we're great. So we're just gonna make that 3 because we need it to come after the unit it's rolling up from, right? Internal med is not gonna sign off on it until allergy signs off on it. And then it's the same for School of Medicine. Now here it says use 049000. However, it's okay because the roll says roll up from 20. And this is unit code 20. So we know it's okay. But if it said PI or admin unit or anything else, we know we need to go back to the investigators team and change their unit because it's not right. It's telling you right here that it's not right. And you would have seen it when you added them as well. So always check your entries. So I'm going to make this 4 because we need it to come after 20, right? PowerPoint, I have a slide that goes through this as well, and I'm going to send you my PowerPoint because I think it'll still be helpful. Once we have this correct, we do authorize unit listing and we get our green check mark. Now, say that it was ecology and physics and sociology. None of those have to route to other units, so you could just leave everything the way it was. You only change the order when you have these roll-ups. That's the only time you want to change the order. Otherwise, just leave it all at that second level, and they will just all get notified at the same time to approve it. But it's not. Let's see if any polls. I didn't create a poll. Okay, so we've talked about how to go through and submit a proposal, right? To check the status of it, we would go and look at my proposals and we could find the status. So let me go ahead and let's just kind of play with that for a minute. And I think, oh, you know what I can do is I can just do this without the animations. We'll just do this without the animations. Okay, so share screen. Okay, so you are seeing my PowerPoint and I show it to myself. But I think this will still be really helpful. This right here are those, this is the approving units that I was talking about, right? So you see here how it rolls up, right? You look over at the roles. If it says roll up and it has this qualifying text, it's okay. It's just letting you know how to route it, how to order it, which is very important. If you saw any of these qualifying text in parentheses and it had anything other than roll up under the role, then you're going to have a routing issue that needs to be corrected. And then you select authorized unit routing. Okay. Our review levels. If we get at least 5 business days before the sponsor deadline that it arrives in sponsored programs, we will perform a full review. If you give us less than 5 business days, we're going to do a limited review based on workload and other things. We're going to review what we can. We'll definitely look at the indirect cost rate and based on how the information was provided to us, but we reserve the right to negotiate at the time of award. If we have less time, like one or it's hard to put qualifying text on these days, you know, qualifying numbers. But if we have no time, say you give it to us that day, we're still going to try to get it out with no review at all and reserve the right to negotiate time of award. It's important to get those days, right? Because we can do it in full. Okay, so now what I want to do is really quick. We talked about who needs to certify, right? So if you could go ahead and use the annotate feature real quick, and in my screen, put a stamp if you think the person must certify in this section, in the first section on the left, or to the right. If so, put a stamp if you think they must certify in that column. Put a stamp if you think that their unit head also must authorize the proposal in this column. All right, awesome. So this is cool. I like seeing how everybody's doing this too. It's kind of fun. So the answers I'm just going to go ahead and give you. And who needs to certify the proposal? The lead PI and the co-PI. The investigator does not need to certify because that's like a co-investigator. It's not really like someone with PI status. And the proposal editor also does not need to certify. Now let me clear, because I actually have it on my next screen because I had some fun with my stamps too. And so this is how it actually will, the unit head for everybody listed here, except for the proposal editor, is gonna have to authorize that proposal. And this is why it's so important to get those rules correct. This is another video of how to check statuses, but I'm just gonna share that with you in your handout. And I kind of went over it a little bit, right? You go to the My Proposals section or Proposals in My Unit. And these are what the statuses mean. So if something says submitted to sponsor, that's what it means. Withdrawn, the PI decided not to apply. We have not funded, which means the sponsor did not fund it. Maybe the PI request or the sponsor requests some just-in-time information, then that's what these 3 things here are for. If you see a proposal that says funded, it does not mean that the award is executed. It only means that we received that notice of award and we've built an award in Cayuse SP. You have to go to the award to see the status of if it's fully executed or not. Unsubmitted or drafts. I think the rest are pretty self-explanatory. I will point out admin office in process means that we have it in SPO but haven't assigned it yet. PS review means that a proposal analyst is reviewing it. CS review would mean that we assigned it to an awards analyst, but it's probably going to say funded because they build those awards like that. Like that's one of the first steps they do. We don't really use proposal approved unless the PI is submitting after we approve it. And proposal reopened is what you're going to see. It'll be in your unsubmitted list, but that is when the department head or an IPF authorizer does not approve it. They reject it and they send it back to you. It's going to say reopened. Active on the award means that it's fully executed. Pending means that it's not. And the subawards I'm not going to go through with you, but all of their statuses are listed here. So what I want you to do right now is take a few moments and just, it may be hard to see the screen, so let me get it as big as I can. And what I would like you to do is just look at this and in the chat, type who you think, or what's the status? What is the proposal status based on this screen? You know, it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, Sarah, it's funded. And I know it's a little bit difficult to see, so let me show you. Well, it's PowerPoint doesn't like me today. Oh my goodness, but it is funded. In that admin area up here at the top, now it's showing a little bit, you'll be able to see the specialist, okay? And the specialists are your assigned proposal analyst. If you, the first one listed is if it's a proposal analyst, and the second one is the award analyst. Sometimes there might be two, sometimes there might be one, like an after the fact would just have one. All right, so now let's just take a moment to look at our learning objective review and make sure we feel like we learned how to do these things. The first thing is that I hope you know how to submit to sponsor programs when you're looking for external funding. That you understand what IPFs are used for, that you understand the routing and approval process, and that you know how to identify and understand the statuses. I'm going to share more information with you, a little video you can look at if you don't know how, if you don't feel like you know how to find those statuses quite yet. But it's I think it's like 90 seconds or 3 minutes, if that, and we'll go through all of that with you as well. I did get some questions ahead of time that I wanted to try to answer. So I'm going to do that real quick. What does the proposal team verify for RCI or conflicts of interest during the proposal process? These are those FCI, the financial conflicts of interest disclosures. We just look to make sure that the ones that are required at proposal stage are done. So that's your 800, your Form 800 or your Form PHS. And you can find the details of what's required in our proposal prep class. But we just go into their system, their ECOI system, and make sure that those disclosures have been filed at time of proposal, if the ones that are required. We create the project folder in SPO when we get the proposal. So when we get your IPF and we assign it to an analyst, that analyst is going to either create a project and put it together in that folder, which is the overarching folder, or we're going to assign it to an existing project if appropriate. After the fact, awards are entered just like every other proposal. We need those minimum proposal documents at least. The shell proposals, I'm not going to go into, we use those for some things that we have in our old database. And then what do we verify at the animal subjects at the proposal stage IACUC? So I need to find a little more information about this, but my understanding is that we go into their system and make sure that the protocols are active, that were provided to us. We really rely on the PIs to be doing that verification process. And like, this is the right protocol that goes for my animal subject or human subject work. All right, so that is the end of the session.